you couldn't just throw anything in an ad account and it would work. Like you actually had to start understanding
Yeah.
strategy, you had to start understanding your consumer. And so, I mean, really, like there's so much that's really happened in the last, 4 years, I would say, that, people just really started to kind of buckle down and understand that, okay, like creativity is super important and it's definitely
Can I
needed.
chime in the creative part? And I want to validate what I'm seeing that has happened also. Is that there's so many people, so many companies, so much noise out there that actually the only way to cut through the noise is through creativity and through strategy, right? What I
Right.
think that what we all been seeing is that vanilla content and content just for the sake of content, like, doesn't move the needle. No one actually cares. People are actually not just the algorithms, but people are actually kind of trained to forget the forgettable, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think, again, I think that's kind of the biggest thing with TikTok, because TikTok just, rose out of, I would say, again, COVID. And it's very much obviously an engagement platform. And people and consumers are just much smarter now. And so they're trained now to understand, okay, this is an ad or this is, someone trying to sell something to me. But if you make it engaging enough where it piques their interest, they're more likely to click on it. So I think, again, definitely that strategy and being, just being super creative is something that, more people and more brands are definitely having to really understand and really rely on their creatives to make sure that they're standing out in front of all of the noise.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Link E-commerce Connections. In today's episode, we're going to be talking with Lauren Schwartz, the owner and founder of The Loft 325, a performance creative studio based in LA. So, Lauren, how are you? Welcome.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How have you been
Good.
getting into
Yeah.
your summer up there?
Yeah, well, it's not really summer here. It's been kind of cold and rainy, so hopefully we get summer
Really?
soon.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully. We're going into winter, so you're much better than us,
Oh, yeah.
by the way. So, Lauren, thanks for joining us today at the Link. It's a pleasure to have you. And we're going to be talking about a lot of things, but mainly about creativity. So, I would ask you first to tell us how is it that you came up with the idea and actually found the need of creating the Loft 325?
Yeah, so I have worked both on agency and brand side of creatives, and Um, honestly, when I was working in the agency, I just realized, there was a huge need for creative, really making sure that people were understanding that creative was so important. I mean, this was 3 or 4 years ago. So it was just one of those things where media buying was still important, but it was kind of starting to not necessarily like become automated, but it was just, there wasn't as much need to, have so much focus on it, and creativity was really needed in ad accounts. And so I just decided to kind of branch off from the agency I was at and start my own company.
Great. And I believe that you started it as first as a side hustle that it started growing on its own, right? Until you said like,
Yeah.
okay, how was that process?
Yeah, so I mean, I was working, I mean, basically I would work at the agency and then at night I would work on my own projects, and on the weekends. So yeah, I mean, really I was doing this probably at least like 6 or 7 years before I decided to kind of branch out and start going on my own. I mean, it's one of those things like it's scary to leave a full-time job and then have everything kind of rely on yourself and hope that it, turns out for the best. But yeah, I mean, it was just one of those things. I had enough clients where I was like, okay, I felt comfortable just, branching out. And really after that, it just kind of, it really just took off. A lot of, word of mouth and, just being able to, really help clients. And I think it just kind of bloomed from there. So it's been awesome. Like it's been a great experience for sure.
Great, congratulations. 6 or 7 years, you were more than prepared, right? It was just
Yeah.
leaving that
Yeah, I was
fear
just,
and taking that step,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's scary, like, knowing that, like I said, you get that steady paycheck coming in every 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, now I got to figure out how to like make it work with, the clients that I have. So yeah, it was definitely just more being scared, but after a while I was like, no, I forget it. Like I'm just gonna do it. And I did it.
Well, congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Magic happens the other side of fear. So that's great for you.
Yes.
So, Lauren, tell me, so you based your whole company is this is what I understand on creativity and strategy and creativity because all the let's call it the automatic stuff was kind of covered. Why is creativity? What happened that creativity started to be more and more important in the last years?
I mean, really, I think, obviously with kind of the rise of TikTok and, obviously with COVID, I think a lot of things, like with COVID being, the last couple years, more people needed to rely on their e-commerce, where kind of retail stores just, they were closing. And so everyone really needed to make that shift into their e-commerce space. And I think a lot of people just kind of realized that, their e-commerce stores, their paid ads just weren't really kind of up to par. And honestly, the, iOS 14 update as well, obviously, like that really kind of triggered a lot of people to, you couldn't just throw anything in an ad account and it would work. Like you actually had to start understanding
Yeah.
strategy, you had to start understanding your consumer. And so, I mean, really, like there's so much that's really happened in the last, 4 years, I would say, that people just really started to kind of buckle down and understand that, okay, like creativity is super important and it's definitely needed. And so yeah, again, I've been a creative my whole life. I've been designing for 16 years, and so I just again just saw the need and kind of that need in the market, and then just really focused, double down on my business, and made it happen.
Great. Can I chime in the creative part? And I want to validate what I'm seeing that has happened also. Is that there's so many people, so many companies, so much noise out there that actually the only way to cut through the noise is through creativity and through strategy, right? What
Right.
I think that what we all been seeing is that vanilla content and content just for the sake of content, like doesn't move the needle. No one actually cares. People are actually not just the algorithms, but people are actually kind of trained to forget the forgettable, right?
Right, yeah. And I think, again, I think that's kind of the biggest thing with TikTok, because TikTok just, rose out of, I would say, again, COVID. And it's very much obviously an engagement platform. And people and consumers are just much smarter now. And so they're trained now to understand, okay, this is an ad or this is, someone trying to sell something to me. But if you make it engaging enough where it piques their interest, they're more likely to click on it. So I think, again, definitely that strategy and being, just being super creative is something that, more people and more brands are definitely having to really understand and really rely on their creatives to make sure that they're standing out in front of all of the noise.
Great. And you talked about engagement, right? So, what can you talk us through and walk us through your creative process, and also to understand what's the kind of the I would call it, I don't know if this is correct, but the checklist that you need to make sure that a piece of content needs to have to at least the first draft to at least know, okay, this is going to be engaging.
Yeah, I mean, again, it kind of depends obviously on the brand, what you're looking for, but in terms of like how I kind of break it down, obviously you need some sort of hook. You need something that's going to capture their attention within the first 3 seconds. Then I would say that you would need to state the problem. What exactly is the problem? Where you could, obviously have that problem in the hook as well. And then from there, you need to essentially share why this problem is being fixed through, this product or this app or, whatever. And then essentially your CTA. So it's kind of like those are kind of the steps that we take when we're kind of building out these ads. Um, and I think, a lot of people too, they more nowadays really look for that hook, that kind of clickbait style. And I think that works, but really now with like how people are watching content, you also need to get them to engage in it as well. So like you need to get them to actually watch longer than 3 seconds. I think if you get them the hold rate to actually have people engaged longer in the ad, then it just helps you overall with the product story, and then really getting them into your funnel. So I think those things, again, it's like more, at one point there was people just really focusing on the hook and not really focusing on the rest of the ad, which again didn't really do anything. And now it's you have to have the whole story. Like you have to have everything within the ad that's going to make it understandable and make it understandable to the consumer, but then also then engage them to want to click and buy. So those are kind of the steps that I take when like we start building out ads and building out our concepts, is that we always make sure that there's these parts of it, and then how do we break those down so that again they're engaging, but they also help you understand what the product is, and then they also kind of share that story that you're trying to capture them in from the hook that you basically generated. So I mean, those are kind of the steps that we take.
That's great. I was going to ask you about clickbait, but I think that you answered that. And tell me, Lauren, I don't know if you run onto this problem, because you actually mentioned that the audience, people are more educated, more informed now, but we have, or I've seen in several times that also educating the client can be
Yes.
a hurdle, right?
Yes,
Because they are
definitely.
too attached to what they like. They think the ads should be for them. It's something that I always tell clients, like, okay, the ads are not for you, are for your
Right.
target audience. Maybe you're not your target audience. So we're not trying to get you by, you're trying to get your clients by. So how hard do you find training your clients, or teaching or educating your clients? And that's one part of the question. The second part of the question is, have you seen a shift? Have you seen a change in how clients react to what clients bring to the table in the last couple of years?
So, first part of your question, I would say yes, definitely training them is hard because, like you said, they're so attached to their product and they're so attached to their brand, which again is understandable. It's their brand. They need to make sure that they, are bringing in the cash flow. But at the same time, like you said, it's also sometimes the product that they create isn't necessarily, they're not the demographic, they're not the ones who are being targeted. So, it definitely does take a lot of education. I would say mostly for kind of the older brands, the older generation, people who have had their brands established for a while and are now having to make this switch into this more, video oriented, more engagement, more, snappy, fast paced creatives. It does take a lot more education on their side. It definitely is a challenge because there are a lot of times when we have to kind of say, okay, this isn't going to work. And this is the reasons why. Like, this is why you hired us, is because we're doing all of this. We're doing, the research for you. We're doing the strategy on like what's working, what's trending. So, like, you have to trust us. So, definitely, like, that part of it is definitely hard for sure. The second part of it, I would say with the clients, wait, I'm sorry, what was the second part again? I forgot the second part of the question.
The second part was basically, if you and I think that you kind of answered that on the first part. It's like, if you've seen a shift of it was harder before to train clients, even older generations, right? That
Yeah,
than it is now.
definitely. Yeah, I would say yeah, both of them, like, older, obviously younger, newer brands, they definitely understand how important it is to, have that need. But then I would say probably the biggest part has been the older brands. They've been the most challenging, but I think they're starting to realize that it's important.
Cool, Lauren. And how important is to be, and how is it that you do it, and you foster it and your team to be, on top of what's happening, right? On top of the trends, whether you use them or not, or you go counter current of that. How important is it, and how do you build a creative, um, I would say, culture within your company to be able to, to communicate that to your clients, even the project managers or the other creators? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, my team who works with me, I mean, thankfully, like, unfortunately, it's good and bad. We're all kind of on the trends a lot. I mean, again, like we're always searching, TikTok, we're always seeing what's trending on Instagram. Really, it's just a lot of us are, we're kind of immersed in this platform, in these platforms, and understanding like what's trending, what's not trending. And again, I mean, it changes so quickly that, we kind of just have this like, I wouldn't say like a running doc, but like kind of this idea bank of like, okay, these are the trends that are working now. Like they're either going to die out really fast or we need to hop on them right away. And so I think there's some trends that you kind of know are going to die quicker than others. And so you just kind of can weed those out of like, okay, do I even want to get on this trend? Do I want to kind of bypass this one and, work on this other one? And again, it obviously depends too on, the product, the client, how, they're being positioned. But within our team, I mean, we work off a platform called Foreplay where we can save ads, save inspiration, and we build out all of these kind of different channels of hooks that we like, reviews, TikTok inspiration, things like that. And we put it all into this platform. The team has access to all of it. And really, we kind of, as we go through our ideation process weekly, we really kind of look and see like, okay, well, what's trending? What are people doing? What are, like what's trending on TikTok, like not just necessarily ad purposes, but like organic as well. I mean, organic is obviously huge. So just kind of seeing like what is out there, like what are people doing, how are people talking about things, and then we kind of take that and move it into our ideation process and our concepting for our like the creatives that we make. So really, I mean, we have like a pretty big like arsenal, I would say, of just like creative inspiration and ideas. And really, it's just my team sitting down and kind of brainstorming, okay, like this is what I think would work for this client, let's put it onto this account and let's, see how it goes. So, my team and I, we're super collaborative. And, thankfully that's kind of the brilliance of like working for yourself is that you get to handpick the people that you want to work with. And so, it's been great to kind of choose who I want to work with because I just trust them and I know how creative they are. And so they, my team brings a ton of inspiration to the table. So it's great.
And Lorna, I guess that you don't say yes to any client that sell any product, right?
Right.
What's your ICP? Like, what's your ideal customer?
I mean, I think like a lot of the clients that I work with, obviously, a lot of it is like things that I like. I gravitate towards clients who sell products that, I would be interested in. But then there are those times, obviously, like when, not every product is meant for me, but a lot of it is really the client. If I'm talking with a client and we just have like a good like rapport and we just have a good like synergy between us, to me like that, even if their product doesn't necessarily, if it's not my, what I would purchase, the fact that like I have a good vibe with them, that always is something that I look for in clients. Like, I've been doing this for a while, and obviously you can kind of weed out the clients where you're like, I just like I know we're going to butt heads and it's just not going to not going to be worth it. And so, those kind of clients I don't necessarily like to work with, but really, I mean, all the clients that I have, like we have a really good rapport with each other, and we're very honest, we're very open and transparent, and it just makes for a really good working relationship. So I would say probably my ideal clients are just people who I have a good relationship with, who listen and understand and are willing to, try new things and work with me.
Because also, I think it's something that we didn't mention. You feature yourself, your own content, right? You create UGC content yourself for your clients,
I
correct?
do, yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean, again, like that stuff, if it's not necessarily on brand for me, but again, like obviously we want to help our clients succeed. Like I would feature myself in them.
And one thing that correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to paraphrase it. I read it on your site, but it was kind of like the difference between UGC and influencers. Kind of what would you say is the main difference, right? Because you see many brands that aim for ambassador programs or influencer programs and stuff, and others do both, or others just pick. Okay, I'm gonna you foster UGC. What's the difference? What are the pros and cons between one and the other?
Yeah, so I think that's actually a big thing that people don't understand is what is the difference between influencer content and what's the difference between like content creation. So influencer content is a product that is given to the influencer and you're obviously paying them to talk about the product, but the way that it's shot is within their aesthetic. It's very much geared towards their audience, the way that they want to talk about the product, the brand, how they use the product. So again, it's not necessarily so much brand focus, but it's more their like how they want to talk about it to their audience and their aesthetic. So their brand, the influencer's brand. With content creation, it's super different in that this is all brand focused. So you're coming from the brand, you are talking about the brand as as someone who understands the brand, knows the product. It's very much brand side, and you again are selling this product. Again, it's more, you're paying these people to do this, but it's not their aesthetic. It's not their, they're not talking to their audience. They're talking to the brand's audience. So there is very much a differentiation with that. I would say, depending on how you want to position your brand, I mean, some brands do really well with influencer content, but then some brands do really well with content creation. So again, it kind of depends on where do you want to put your marketing dollars? What's working towards your actual brand? Is it influencer content or is it, content creation? So again, this kind of UGC content creation. I think it just kind of depends on what's working for your brand specifically and, where you really want to put that.
That's a great answer. And Lauren, well, we mentioned, the Loft. It's more of a performance creative agency, right?
Hmm.
But what? Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I've seen is that you also generate a lot of branding, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
How do you? And branding, we all know how difficult it is to measure. We know how
Yes.
effective it can be, but difficult to measure, and that's what the other side of the coin of performance. How do you how do you go around that with clients? Is branding something that they get because of the content, like as a side product, or you put branding first? How is it that you work around? I would say that yeah, the difference between branding and performance. I don't know how to
Yeah,
phrase
yeah.
it, but
No, no, for sure. I think like again, we do content creation, but then we also work with a client's branded assets as well. So the way that we look at it again is that we're a performance creative studio. So we focus on performance. So if we have an ad account and their kind of more branded assets are working, then we'll lean more heavily into their branded assets because again, that's what works for their clients, what works for their audience. Like they really want to focus on the brand aesthetic, the branding, and how that works. I do always make sure though with clients like that we still mix in user generated content as well because again, especially on Meta, you can't necessarily rely so heavy on one thing. You really have to diversify it. You have to have video, you have to have statics, you have to have UGC, you have to have branded. Like again, like they're obviously Facebook, it always, it'll pick the winner and then obviously push all of the budget towards that winner. But then you always have to make sure that you're testing and really optimizing, what's winning and then, trying to find new winners, iterations, things like that. But For the clients that we work with, we really try to make sure that we're focused on performance as a whole. So it doesn't necessarily have to be all branded oriented, but we really try to make sure that we're mixing in everything so that we can, obviously test new things, make sure that we're really finding that true performance so that, their ad accounts can scale. Oh, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Lauren, can you? This is the live recording hurdles. Can you share? I was thinking about if asking about any campaign that you really enjoyed, and what was it about that you got like
Ooh,
really good results?
um, tough. I mean, we've had a lot of we've had a lot of really good campaigns. I'm trying to think of like one in particular. Um, I would say we had one client that we worked with. It was for a hair care product, and it was kind of one of those like those ads where it was like it seems like it didn't really have like a lot of thought that was put into it. It was very like problem solution oriented. And I think like we had kind of tested, a bunch of other things. And really we were just like, okay, we just really need to state the problem like, as quickly as possible. And I think it was like less than a 15-second ad. And the hook was just really good. Like she had really crazy, kind of damaged looking hair. And then the next shot was like this beautiful hair. And it was like, called out a couple things and like that was it. It had like over 4 million views on TikTok. It just like I think it's still running in the ad account. Like it just scaled tremendously and like it was really funny just because we had tested so many other things and we were just like, oh, we're going to try all these different like these different ideas and what's been trending and working and really it was just the simplest thing that took us, maybe 10 minutes to come up with and then it just crushed. So it's funny again too, like how, obviously performance works is that sometimes you put your heart and soul into like some of these campaigns and really like the simplest thing works the best. But I think that was probably one of the biggest things that it was just so interesting how many things we tested and then this one just outperformed everything.
And I guess that based on what you're saying, I guess that the other also happens, right? That you think, oh, this is very creative, and you need to pivot because you don't get it, right? Like markets and
Yeah.
people and users are kind of tricky sometimes.
Yeah. Definitely.
You know what, Lauren? There was I don't know where I heard this, but it stuck with me for a long time. I don't know if I heard it, if I read it, whatever. But it was something like every company nowadays needs to be a publishing company in the front end and selling products or services on the back end. Do you agree with that statement or that idea?
Um, I mean, yes and no, I would say. I mean, I don't know. I guess like in some aspect, kinda, because I mean, I guess like when I think about it for myself, obviously we're working to, sell to do these projects and these, work with these clients, but at the same time, I mean, I guess it's kind of we do have to work on the back end as well. So, yeah, I mean, I guess, I mean, obviously, like, we definitely, definitely do have to do that. So, yeah, I guess I would agree with that, that you do have to kind of be both in a sense now.
Yeah. No, the reason I'm asking because I hear it uh, once and again. Like, no, this company, no, we do not need to create content, or no, we're not a company that creates content, right? Even for services. And I truly believe that everyone should be creating content. Like everyone
Yes.
should understand their clients and understand what are their needs and actually fulfill those needs in a way that might not be directly, and this is the hard part with performance agencies, right? But maybe not directly linked to the final product or service, but solving a problem, answering a question, right? And
Yeah.
providing that answer or that content for them in the right time Um, and I've seen it, that many company owners kind of are not fine with that idea, right? They think because traditionally their vertical doesn't create content, they won't create content, right? Or they won't put their
Yeah.
voice out there.
I mean, yeah, that is true. Yeah. I mean, we've definitely seen I've actually had it's funny, I've had a couple calls with brands recently where they've kind of had that same, thought process where they're like, yeah, we for so long refused to do content, but now we just like now we're getting passed up by all of our competitors because they're not making the content. So, yeah, I mean, it definitely is needed for sure. You can't in this day and age with so much content out there, there's no way that you can't not make content.
And based on platforms, do you start is TikTok your default platform?
No, so we mostly we work on both, honestly. We work on Meta and TikTok. So a lot of the ads that we design, especially video content, we actually design for TikTok first. We call it like I guess TikTok first creatives because those are the ones obviously like we're designing for that platform. But anything you essentially design for TikTok, you can put into the Meta account and it will usually performs really well. So any sort of video content we do, we always design for TikTok first, and then we will put that into the Meta ad account. There are obviously some instances where we have to design for Meta obviously first, depending on the client. But we always try to make sure that we're more heavily focused design wise on TikTok, and then Meta will follow after.
And what would be those differences? What would you consider when you're designing TikTok first rather than Meta first?
Yeah, I think again for Meta specifically, again, depending on the client, it's very much, I would say, I guess like an older platform in that, more people are again a little bit more interested to watch the longer form videos on there. Obviously, short form content is obviously huge, but I would say more of the older generation is on there, so they want a little bit more information. Whereas TikTok, again, it's engagement. Like you want to like the quicker you get to the point, the better. Again, with like trending audios, things like that, trends that are happening on TikTok, there's just the
What audio?
nuances,
Sorry, can you repeat that? Into training audios?
the trends. Oh, the trends, like the
Oh,
trends that are,
trending. Okay, trending. Yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
trending audio. Yeah, the trending audio that's on there. So again, like when we're kind of designing for Meta, we again more focus on kind of telling more of like the whole story and really making it, we tend to do more long form on Facebook than we do on TikTok. So again, like we still take those TikTok creatives and put them into Meta, but then we also tell more of like the founder stories and the long form content into Meta. And we do that in TikTok, but it's not as like robust as it would be on Meta. So things like that are just kind of those like small differences.
Cool. And what are some of the, I need to ask this, right? But what are some of the benefits of the new AI trend? Have you been able to incorporate any type of AI tools into your creative process?
Yes, I have actually. I haven't really used much of the like image generators or things like that, but we have specifically been using one AI generator where it's a voice cloner. And that's
Oh,
actually
yeah.
been really big for us because again, like we use so many voices and scripts within our ads. A lot of times, we have our content creators who they'll send us a voiceover, but we need to change it really fast, like because it just didn't make sense or something like that. We essentially can take their voice and clone it, and then it sounds exactly like them, and then we can type out whatever script we need, and then edit it and add it into the ad. So I think that's probably been the biggest one we've been using so far has been the AI voice cloner. But Obviously, ChatGPT. I mean, we use that a lot, obviously, to kind of come up with like new hooks and different variations and iterations. But I think in terms of, kind of the differences with like, some of the people, some of the stuff that's out there, I think like where they're, making these like avatar people for video,
Yeah.
we haven't necessarily used that because again, I think right now people still want to see real people and not necessarily these avatars. But yeah, we have been using some of the AI generated stuff.
Lauren, are there any new platforms out there that are growing, social media platforms that, or have you tried any other platforms or are aware of something that's coming?
Um, I mean, I know there's obviously other platforms out there. I know TikTok has tried to push their new platform, which is that like Lemonade platform, which I haven't really seen too much of like a push on that. It's just not as engaging as
What is it?
TikTok.
I haven't heard about it.
It's basically like it mixes Pinterest and Instagram. So it's kind of
Got it.
like the old school Instagram where it's just mostly feed
Okay.
oriented photos. But they're trying to kind of push that platform. But again, I think people are still so engaged with TikTok that I don't think it's really gonna. I don't think it's gonna take off, but that's just my thought process on it. But I haven't really seen like any, you know, like new trendy ones. I think TikTok is still obviously TikTok and Instagram are still so big that I don't think they're going
Huge.
anywhere anytime soon.
Cool. Great. So, Laurent, well, we're coming to an end here. So, why should someone call you? What is the problem that you would solve for someone? Engage them, make them a hook. All yours.
I mean, yeah, we are, like I said, we're a performance creative studio, and we really do focus on performance. So we really do mix in the data and the creative of everything. So I think that's again like one of the biggest things that a lot of creative agencies don't necessarily focus on. Is making sure that they're understanding the data as well. So, we heavily focus on both. So I think again, that's kind of like one of our biggest selling points is that we are creative, but we also really make sure that we understand what we're, putting into your ad account as well.
Great. So, Lauren Schwartz, founder and director of the Loft 3 to 5, thank you very much for joining us on today's episode.
Thank you, Diego, for having me.
Okay, everybody, thank you very much. This was The Link. I'm Diego Praderi. Hope to see you next time. Bye bye.